Let's go. We got another client launch episode. We have none other than best-selling author DK Ciccone, and she is the author of You're Meant to Move. And we're going to get deep into that. DK, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Hey, I just got to say, most fun I've had saying someone's name in the history of the show. All right. I know we've rehearsed it several times beforehand. There was no way I wasn't going all in for you.
It's my most favorite way to hear it, honestly. Pretty exciting.
Awesome. So, hey, you have a book that's out. You're meant to move.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this was a heck of a journey for you. So, I
Yes.
want to start with the background in mind. What's your background and what led you to deciding, hey, I need to write a book?
So my background is actually journalism. I have an English and journalism degree from Syracuse, go Cuse. Um, but I haven't really used it. I ended up in the health field. But I've always had writing as an outlet, as blogging. And when I did start my Pilates for pain business, I started a newsletter and I was regularly just doing research. And, I myself am a chronic pain sufferer from the age of 13 is actually where my journey with pain began. And so I was trying to bring together this community associated with my studio, but also kind of beyond my studio of other folks who felt that movement was their birthright and were kind of frustrated by the obstacle of chronic pain and they weren't getting answers in the health system. So like I had all that behind me. I was doing research. I was trying to understand pain. Um, and I just knew I wanted to get, legitimacy in this field. I mean, I don't have, I'm not an MD, I'm not a physical therapist. And so getting those conversations started was hard for me. And every time I would look at what would it take to go get a physical therapy degree, it's like, oh, just 3 years of your life and 150K. So I kept like hitting this wall and I'm like, I'm doing the research. I feel like I'm learning and yet I can't get these conversations started. And then in the spring of last year, I was on a plane to Cancun and I downloaded a bunch of episodes of another podcast. And you happened to be the featured guest on the first one. And I heard your story about like, hey, a book can be an awesome way to open up doors, kind of like the greatest ROI on a piece of marketing that you could ever have, right? Because there's a lot of waste. And it was just like, boom. I don't know if it was, the margarita on the plane or it's just my vibes, but I was like, we're doing this, we're doing a book. And I was like, I was so ready. And so, yeah, that's how we landed here.
That's awesome. I want to address a couple things. Number one, go Cuse. Okay, fun fact. So fun fact here. All right, this is an episode about books. And when my first book came out, the first university to put my book into a course syllabus was Syracuse University and their
Yes.
sports management program. So I'll never forget my buddy made an introduction. He was a student there, made an introduction to their career development department in the sports management school. We got connected, okay? And then my book became part of their syllabus. And so I actually flew myself out there to speak. This was early on in my career. And I was so excited about this because it was the first one. And I'll never forget how cold it was in Syracuse.
Yes.
I remember taking like the bus, because I was hustling then. I took the bus from New York. I was completely bundled up, freezing my ass off. The door was flailing open. I was like, what am I doing? And Syracuse was just a beautiful place. So I love it. It also goes to show you the power of a book and getting it into places. But the other thing that you really talked about was this concept of, okay, what is the best use of time, energy, and money? And
Yes.
for you were doing the work, right? And there's blessings and curses in relation to this concept, which is no longer do people need to have traditional educational backgrounds to be able to do a lot of things. Now, if you're going to practice law, you still need to have a law degree, right? But if you are going to help people heal from pain based on your own experiences, you don't need to have necessarily a medical degree, but you do need to have the expertise. But more importantly, you need to have other people believe that you have the expertise.
Yes.
And so what is the fastest way to doing that? Well, for you, God bless the margarita, right? You decided that the book was going to be this entry point. It was going to be a much more affordable route than going back to school. It was going to be a much faster timeline, and it was going to be able to put you in a category of one instead of a category of 1 million, right? Of
Mhm.
everybody else. And so
Mhm.
when you started this, though, I'm sure there were some hesitations around, okay, can you do this? Do you know enough? What were some of those hesitations or concerns that you faced before committing to write the book?
I mean, my biggest thing was I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to claim to be a Pilates for pain specialist in writing, like not just in my little studio with 12 people, but like out there on Amazon, and I'm going to push it out there. And, you know, people may resist that. People may not like that one. And so I was so full of the negative stories of what, you know, could happen instead of being focused on like, but what awesome could happen, you know what I mean? And I think that was when we first, you know, met, that was like a big part of my hesitation, but it's a crazy obstacle to put in front of yourself, like other people's opinions. I mean, that was my biggest thing. I mean, I knew I could do it. I'm a finisher, so like I knew that I would figure it out. But I was like, am I ready to put myself out there? Because there's a lot of personal stuff in there about my own story and you know how I've managed pain over time. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely had to get over that.
Yeah, and you did a great job. Throughout our entire time together, I remember you'd come and you'd be like, "Hey, I need some help on this. Hey, how much do I include here?" And I think something that you did a really great job of, and you just alluded to it, is you shared some of that personal story mixed with the practical advice, right? And this is what really makes a great and trustworthy book. Right. And so,
Mhm.
in your book, You're Meant to Move, we got the subtitle of A Guide to Conquering Chronic Pain, Increasing Stress Resilience, and Reclaiming an Active Life. What for you would you say right off the bat here, if someone is in pain, okay,
Mm.
what would you say is one immediate action item or immediate thing they should think about that would help them maybe overcome some pain or get them one step closer to alleviating that pain?
Yeah, so we don't always recognize that pain is actually a product of many factors. So your physical tissues in your body are only one factor about what contributes to your pain experience. So I would ask the person, and I do ask people to go back and think about, okay, when this pain started, like what was going on in your life? It's not just I was in my desk a lot, or I had, you know, I was sitting too long, or you know, I fell off. I had maybe if you had like a, you know, really obviously like you were hit by a car. But for most people, there's like a lingering pain that started at some point. And, you know, I just had a woman the other day who said she was blaming a bike ride that she took with her husband. And she's like, I went on this really long bike ride and my back was really hurting. And I said, you know, I'm not a doctor, but like a bike ride, like really, there's nothing about the pressure of your body on a bike that should make your back be injured. I said, you know, what was going on outside? And she said, well, now that you mention it, you know, my sister-in-law died. And there's just almost always something like that. And then once you start pulling on that thread, it's like, well, what are the feelings that were showing up in your body beforehand that you weren't addressing? I heard someone say last week, it's like it comes as a feather first, and then it comes as a brick. And then
Yeah.
I remember what the third one was, like a freight train or something. I don't remember what it was. But I mean, we often miss the feather. And so pain is just like one way that your body is trying to get in touch with you. And so I guess the number one thing is like what's happening around the pain. And then number two is, you know, have you already written your body off? You know, like have you already just decided like this story in which pain now runs your life and you've given up? Because a lot of people, we feel a lot of despair, and I'm just here to say there's so much hope. I mean, I've seen it over and over, in people's lives.
It's fascinating that you say that because we often don't notice the pain until it's the physical side, right?
Mm-hmm.
But from what you're saying, like I'm thinking of some of the times when I find myself in pain, a lot of it comes from when I'm more stressed out. My body physically then may be more susceptible to a basic injury or something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting as you say that. And I think there's, things you got to do mentally to be strong and physically to be strong as well. But it's
Yes.
really interesting as you say that. And so I want to dive into the concept of stress resilience, right? It's one of the things that really attracted me to the idea. I know it's something that you talk a lot about. It's something that has a lot of meaning to you. So walk us
Yeah.
through the concept of stress resilience and how it relates to this overarching concept of pain.
So stress resilience comes from the fact that I had, you know, a stint of a corporate career, kind of like VP track, super high intensity, big five consulting firm, tough stuff. And I was always chasing after, the next level, and I was ambitious. And it was always coming up that like the fact that I would maybe have a reaction to something that was a difficult situation or conflict, I needed to toughen up. I needed thicker skin. Like it was always turned back at me. And so then I was kind of just telling myself this story that, I'm obviously not able to manage my stress. Like other people are able to manage the stress. And once I started like addressing my narratives around pain and realizing that I had told myself a story that movement was no longer for me because of pain. I was kind of like, well, what other stories am I telling myself? And this one of sort of needing to show up inauthentically, in order to prove to people that I was worthy of whatever title, like just was coming up for me. And I was realizing that when you do the research and you kind of look at the way that we live, stress is not really like our problem. It's our reaction to an environment for which we have not evolved to handle. And so we
Ooh.
have like varying degrees of ability to like thresholds of sensitivity to that environment. But the reality is the rate at which our brain is asked to process information is just so exponentially beyond what we would have been doing, 10,000 years ago or whatever, that, we're just not there yet. And so our nervous system is inundated. And so for me, it was much like diet culture, which I also talk about. It was like I was starting to realize that all the times I had believed I was at fault, it was like the system was at fault. And so I have to exist in the system in a way that protects me. And that might mean boundaries. It might be in also holding other people accountable for like what is an appropriate standard, but it also means building community. And I like to now call it radical stress resilience in my workshop, because it's like, why aren't we demanding more from the systems that we have in place? We're the richest country in the world, and people are on Prozac and in pain all the time. Up to 80% of people are expected to have low back pain in this country at some point in their lives. I mean, why are we allowing this to be our existence?
Mm.
So I think the stress resilience is about, I can't manage the stress. I can't walk out and make it less stimulating to be in this life. Like that's just the world. So I can't manage it, but I can protect myself. I can build resilience, and I can learn that feather, right? I can learn what is my sign that my system is getting a little bit to its max, so that I can go back and nurture my system and bring it back into balance. Because stress, your response of that like flight or flight or whatever, your adrenaline response to your environment is a completely natural evolutionary thing that would have saved us from predators and so on. So we
Yeah.
don't want to fault ourselves for having a reaction to a very normal stimulus. We just need to figure out what we need to feel good.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's why you got to pick up the book. You're meant to move. Just go pick up the book. If you're listening to this, grab a copy on Amazon. You're meant to move. DK Ciccone, and we'll get it going here. But here's the thing. Stress, I think, when I think of stress, I tend to think of, stress as a negative, right?
Mm-hmm,
Most of the
mm-hmm.
time we associate stress as a negative, but as you're describing this, and from the research that I've done around this and around peak performance, what I've noticed is that stress is neither a bad or good thing. Stress is stress. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we need to have stress in various situations to trigger certain bodily functions and
Yes.
emotions and regulation. And so what you're talking about is essentially removing the connotation that you derive from the word stress of good or bad, and instead focus on the resilience of stress will exist. How can you build your systems, your own systems, to fit within the existing systems that are out of your control?
100%. I mean, when I step into a crosswalk and a car is flying down the street, boy, am I glad I have stress to tell
Right?
me, get out the way. But I don't want to feel like a bus is bearing down on me 24 hours a day. And it's not good for your nervous system. And we know that if you allow yourself to be in that state of overstimulation, it will have negative effects on your body. I mean, it just will. So yeah, 100%. I love that. It removes, it kind of makes it neutral. And the same is true of pain. Like when you start thinking about, okay, this is a sensation in my body, it doesn't inherently need to be negative. Like, and you start trying to be more neutral with pain, it's very similar.
That's really interesting because pain is how it hurts. It's never good pain, right? Like unless you work out and you have that like soreness and you're like, okay, that's a stretch, okay? But let's go deeper on this. I'm very fascinated to hear your opinions on this. Pain tends to be negative, right? No one's like, oh, I'm in pain, I have good pain. It's, oh, I'm in pain, this blows, right? They're like, how do I stop feeling this way? And so we are reactive, hence why we take Advil, Tylenol medications, because we have the pain and then we react to the pain by solving something instead of being proactive to avoid getting in the pain in the first place. But when you have pain, you start to see it the way that you're talking about, which is just as a sensation in your body. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How can we though reframe that naturally, or what are we supposed to do? Because if we do feel pain, we have that pain. No matter what we could have done before, we are now in this spot where we feel this sensation, and normally, it's not a feeling of positive sensation per se. So what do we do in that situation once we already have the pain, so that we don't end up relying on certain types of medication only to solve that problem, be the source of our healing?
So I will just say, although we're not going on this path, there are people who love pain, right? Sort of fantasize and fetishize pain. So we're not gonna get into that. But you know, so it is very natural for you to be like, pain is a bad feeling in my body, because again, evolutionarily, if you stepped on a sharp object and you're bleeding and you didn't know to tend to that physical thing in your body, you could have died. So pain is meant to signal, go fix this thing. So I think the issue is when you say, okay, I have the pain, and then you ask yourself, okay, now that I understand like how my body gets damaged, like, did something actually happen? Has anything about my physical situation changed? And that's when I usually ask people, like, did you have a diagnosis? You know, do you have a new condition? Did you fall? Like, did something happen that like would have clearly injured your tissues? And if not, then it's a matter of saying, okay, so then I know that this pain, while it might not feel great, is not actually a sign that I'm in danger. So how do I retrain my brain to disconnect whatever I'm doing from that pain reaction? We often develop like a pattern of I maybe you went, like I have someone I'm working with who fell down doing like a rock climbing wall. And so for that person, like leaning in this direction, huge trigger of, you know, the feeling of that she had after she fell. So we have to figure out like, what is that pattern? And that's kind of where the book gets into the technical stuff, is like,
Yeah.
where do you have those connections where you've already decided this thing is bad for me? And how do we actually test that hypothesis over and over again until you no longer feel that way? And what I do, like sometimes, so I've had knee surgery before, and I'll go for a jog, and sometimes my knee will start bugging me. And then I'm like, you know, I'm kind of like, oh, I should stop, or like, and then I just have to think about it like, okay, I've done the research. I know that they've said that knee osteoarthritis is actually prevented from progressing by running, which is like a new great piece of information for us. So I'm like, I'm not hurting my body. And then I'm like, what if I visualize that my knee is a cloud, and it's just this light, fluffy cloud, and I'm just jogging along, light, fluffy cloud, like, and then literally like it will just shift. Either the sensation
Yeah.
goes away, or my brain has decided, and this is, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's some kind of, you know, kind of crazy woo-woo, but like your brain is so powerful. And I feel like we don't harness the power of our minds. And ultimately your brain is the source of pain.
Yeah. I want to, this will be the last big point I want to bring up, because you're getting me going down a rabbit hole here, is when
I can talk about it all day, Jake. You know this.
I know. And I love it. I love it. What's interesting is, you know, there are people that believe in the power of the mind, right? To almost an extreme, right?
Yes.
There's the woo-woo, the almost magical, mystical crowd. And then there's this is what it is. This is the facts. This is the reality based on how they feel, right? Doesn't mean the research supports it, right? Like what you just said might be different from everything. My question to you is, your book's You're Meant to Move, right? We talk a lot about movement. How much of this game, when navigating pain, stress, etc., how much of this is mental versus also truly the physical side of taking care of your body and doing the things, right? Think of it as, for those that are listening, like I want to equate this to the law of attraction, right? The law of attraction is a very powerful thing, but you can't just visualize your future and it happens. You have to visualize it, have the optimism, but do the work that actually makes it happen. And that's how you create the future, right? So my
Yes.
question to you is, when it comes to pain, because when people are in pain, they're like, I'll do whatever it takes, just get me out of this, right? But then we
Yes.
forget about it until we're back in that place. So how much is this mental and the reframing and the positive optimism versus how much of it is actually moving and doing the right Pilates in your case, right? The right mechanism for that individual.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to make a blanket statement because obviously there are different reasons people that have pain. So, like, I have a client with multiple sclerosis. Pain will be a symptom forever and ever, and
Yep.
there's nothing we can do about that, right? Um, but my kind of hypothesis, or like why the thrust of the book is around movement, is that whether you're hurting or not, movement is good for you. And
Mm,
movement will actually help you feel better. It'll help you feel better emotionally and physically. It will strengthen you if you're doing, the right kinds of movement. And it will also improve your confidence, and it will keep you active into old age. And so my feeling is, all things being equal, just move your body,
yeah.
even if it hurts, if you know it's safe for you. So
Mm,
I would definitely, I guess I'd probably take it for granted. Like, I should say all these things I'm talking about in terms of like your mind control. I'm doing that in the context of moving people. You're not going to sit on your couch and suddenly decide that your back feels better and expect anything to change. I'm kind of combining pain reprocessing therapy, which is something that the Pain Psychology Center talks about, with what I know about helping people move, which is that I can actually expedite the like exposure therapy component of breaking that pain cycle when I'm getting you to move in situations that you were previously uncomfortable with. And
yeah.
so we get you stronger. And then, so what I find with people is, it's like a flywheel, it's slow at the beginning. Like, people are kind of picking up the skills, are really nervous, but then as they get stronger, now they're taking that longer walk to the bus and they're not, driving anymore. And
Mhm.
once they start doing that, they're like, yeah, okay, I'll watch your kids next weekend. And then, you know what? Okay, sure. I'm going to say yes to that hiking vacation in Italy. And like, now all of a sudden you've gotten them going and they're feeling good. And once you have those positive chemicals in your brain, the pain will subside anyway, right? I mean, that's just kind of how our bodies work. So it
Yeah.
is definitely, it's something that builds upon itself. You have to combine the decision to change your relationship with pain and keep working that, along with moving and challenging yourself and building new skills in your body. Because the amazing, and I think most hopeful thing about being in in this physical human body is that it can always improve. If I keep
Mhm.
stressing your muscles until you're 85 or whatever, like, you will always build muscle. Like, it's not like you're going to just stop. You can always
Yeah.
improve to some degree. And so I think we, a lot of times in this, like, our aging populations, I think we've not necessarily changed that narrative of like, oh, you're going to sit there and watch the clouds go by because you're at that age now and like enjoy that. So I think we, promoting a story of independence is only possible if we're active, and it's only possible if we learn how to be active through the pains that will come with a natural life well lived, getting banged up, degeneration of our joints, which is inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah. I like if I were boiling it down, the thing that came to my mind as you're talking about this is, when you are deciding if you're going to work out or not. And it doesn't always have to be moving away from pain, right? Like in your case, that's your expertise and your specialty. But like I think about it as like, something like I don't really want to go work out, right? Then I kick my butt into gear and I'm like, okay, let's go do the workout. Showing up is better than nothing. Then once I'm there, I
Yes.
obviously am like, okay, well, now I'm here. Let me just do the workout. And then when I'm done, I'm like, oh, I feel so good. Like I am so
Right.
grateful that I did
You've
the workout.
never regretted it, right?
No one that I've ever met has ever gone to a workout, left the workout and been like, no, I don't feel better because I did that, right? Like,
Yes.
but it's that concept. And then guess what? You do that a few times, then you start liking the working out again, right? And then you're like, you know what? I'm looking a little bit better. My confidence starts to rise. And then the confidence rises and
Hmm.
they start to make better decisions. Like there's
Hmm.
one thing that stacks upon the next. And so I love the way you broke that down. How DK, talk me through this. Like your book comes out, you're getting ready for the launch, you're excited, you're talking about it. Like what was your launch week like? What was it like emotionally? What were some of the things that happened? How did you immediately start using the book?
Launch week was mayhem. It's Yeah, it's like running a race. It's just like trying to come in at the, that last, you're pushing through the end of it, I mean, obviously like everything that you taught us about having the launch team like set up and stuff, that really helped. I really did not believe I was going to be a bestseller. Like I wasn't even like hung up on that because I just wanted to have the book and the ability to share like, hey, you want to work with me? This is what it's like. Um, so I woke up that day and, was kind of promoting it and then was like watching it rise. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild. So, that was exciting. And then 2 days later, my big launch, was actually 2 days later where I did an exhibit at the Massachusetts Women's Conference, which had like 9,000 people at it, huge speakers. And that was the most magical day because I just had piles of my books there and people were coming by and I was trying to get them away, although not everybody understood that they were free. But people would come in and either be, maybe like a small percentage were like, oh, pain, I don't want to talk about that. But like people were coming in and going, oh my gosh, you want to talk to me about pain? Like, let me tell you about my pain. And I actually hired a social media content creator for that day. And I'm so glad I did because I have so many video clips of people just pouring their stories. I mean, people are hurting. People left and right of you like are hurting in this world and like keeping it inside. And I could see that they were just getting relief from talking about it. And they were just happy that there was a person and people, like there's a community of us who want to have more conversations about pain. And so for me, that was really just the most magical moment of just realizing like I could kind of hit on something that was really resonating with people. And then since then I've been trying to just mail it out. Um, I got some podcasts, to talk about it and just to get the message out there and, to initiate conversations with I actually had a new client walk into my studio yesterday, which doesn't happen very often. And she said, hi, I've been following you on Instagram and I've read your book and I feel like I know you and I want to work with you. And I couldn't believe it because I hadn't met anyone in the wild who had bought my book and wasn't a friend of mine or a friend of a friend. So yeah, I have a feeling the seeds are germinating, you know what I mean, out there. But for me, just there's like incredible peace of mind that when I start a conversation with a new potential partner or a local PT, that I can just be like, here's what I do. Here's everything I know. And if you want to know about me, like, please tell your clients. And I will be building also a coaching program to go along with the book to help people
Yeah.
through the steps. Cause I think that will be really helpful because it's kind of written in such a way that you would potentially go through a 12-week program. So that's coming.
That's awesome. I wanna take a second, especially as we get ready to wrap this up. I want to take a second to like articulate what you just said and show people what's possible, but also recognize you. Because I don't know if you've had a chance to really appreciate what you just said. Okay. Your book comes out in middle of December. Okay. Your book comes out in the middle of December. You launch it. On launch week, you hit bestseller status. You then have books at a booth that you're exhibiting at that you're now getting to meet the exact people that you did not know before then. And you're
Yes.
giving them a book and you're having these real conversations with people who, one, could become clients, but two, who you just know that your book was meant for them. Okay, you're at
Yes.
this, you're getting social content, you're feeling it. Okay, then you enjoy the holidays. You're giving away books. And then in January, someone says, I followed you on Instagram. I bought your book. I read your book. Now I'm in your studio and I want to work with you. That happened in 30 days with the holidays. Okay, let's
Mm-hmm.
really understand what just happened in 30 days. Okay, this isn't
Yes.
like you spent 6 months getting to this point. It was you launched a book and within a month, everything I just said happened. So for you, I just want you to take a second to recognize that everything you desired is coming and happening right now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's happening. You have an idea for a course. You're speaking more confidently. Like all of these things are happening already. Okay.
Yes.
And for everybody that's listening, I want you to see like what is possible, right? Like
Mm.
this is just the beginning of DK's adventure, and she already has such a bigger plan. But just in that opening launch, you followed the process, you got your book, you launched your book, and now you're having people you've never met come and beg you to work with you. Like this is the game. You're playing it and you're playing it really well. So DK,
Well, and to put things in context, the last time I've had a new client appointment was 4 months ago.
wow, huge,
So that's pretty great.
huge. So let's talk about this. How do we get the book? How do we work with you? How do we learn more about you? Give us the goods and we'll make sure we link it all up.
Yeah, so I mean, it's on Amazon, obviously, but you can also go to you'remeanttomove.com, and I have the links for various countries because I do have some folks from different countries. And you can find me at movementremedies.org or at movement_remedies on social. And yeah.
Awesome. 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 Make sure to grab a copy of the book, You're Meant to Move. DK, this has been a pleasure. I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge. I loved how we were able to get really deep on that and also sharing a little bit about your book process. So thank you for coming on the show. And for everyone that just listened to this, if you enjoyed this, I challenge you to take something that DK said today and apply it, right? There are a couple practical tips that no matter where you're at, you can immediately go and implement that, whether it's around stress, whether it's around pain, whether it's reframing your mindset, or whether it's shit, I got to write my book like DK because I got to win like DK is winning. Whatever it is, I challenge you to take the one thing, put it into practice, and start making your dreams come true. So with that said, I appreciate y'all, and I'll see you next time.